not only did the Republican Party under Trump pass probably the biggest tax cut, really the highway robbery, the bank robbery that gave all the money to Trump's donors and all their corporate donors. But now the House is trying to make those individual tax cuts. And when they say individual tax cuts, what they're really saying, yeah, it'll be for all classes that got the tax cut, but really they don't give a damn about the people on the lower end making those tax cuts permanent, because those are crumbs. They are trying to push the individual tax cuts for their donors, the 1%, the fossil fuel execs, the big pharma execs, the Wall Street bankers, and all the special interests that have bought off the United Corporations of America. Which is very funny in contrast to what Trump said today in announcing the new trade deal with Canada, which I'm going to get to. But I want to read you this so you know what's going on. And of course, the Democrats, because they're pathetic and they don't know how to do politics, won't message on this and will barely fight on this. So House Republicans passed bill to extend individual tax cuts. Of course, the Washington Post writes it like that instead of tax cuts for the rich. Because let's not actually say what it is. We're, quote, neutral. So House Republicans pushed through a new round of tax cuts Friday that would permanently extend the cuts for individual in President Trump's signature law that are set to expire within a decade. During debate over the tax law last year, Democrats frequently attacked Republicans because the legislation contained permanent rate reductions for corporations, but temporary ones for individuals. The Senate has no intention of taking up the bill, which is projected to add more than $600 billion to the debt by the end of the next decade, and much more beyond that. But House Republicans moved the measure Friday, 5 weeks ahead of midterm elections that will decide control of Congress, in an effort to refocus attention on Trump's top legislative accomplishment, if you want to call it that, as well as to put Democrats in the position of voting against giving permanent tax cuts to individuals at all income levels. Let's see. Quote, "This relief goes to middle-class families and low-income families working their way up," said Congressman Kevin Brady, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. "Who do you trust, Washington to spend your money, or you and your family?" Congresswoman Linda Sanchez said, "I guess their giveaway to the ultra-wealthy wasn't enough the last time around, so they've come back for round two. When the bill finally comes due, I'm terrified Republicans will pay for it by cutting Social Security and Medicare." So if we had a competent opposition party in this country, thank you, Gene, for the $4.99. Appreciate it. And thank you, O.T. Tucker. I'm paying for you to call them like you see them. Thanks so much. So if we had a competent Democratic Party, it's very easy. It's very easy. Say, no, we're not going to vote for this because the, quote, individual across-the-board tax cuts, we will not vote for anything that makes permanent tax cuts for rich people. If that means that with the tax cuts for the lower class aren't made permanent, so be it. So be it. We are looking out for the middle class and the lower class, because who do you think is going to end up paying for us to make those tax cuts for the wealthy, for, frankly, Republican donors and Democrat donors? This is the thing that's not out there much, but most wealthy people donate to both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party just to hedge their bets, because their ideology is money more than Democrat-Republican. That's how most rich people donate. If you look at some of the richest donors, they give to Democrats and Republicans. Maybe more to Republicans or more to Democrats, but they give to both. Jeb Bush's donors were given to Hillary Clinton in the general election, and she was courting that vote, which is one of the worst parts of her strategy. But the point is, this is what Barack Obama did wrong as president. He ended up making the top tax cuts of the Bush tax cuts. He agreed to extend them because the Republican Party was holding at gunpoint the tax cuts for the lower end. You know what a smart, passionate progressive would have done? Said, no, I'm not going to be held at gunpoint so we could give corporate welfare and welfare for wealthy people to the Republicans. I'm going to barnstorm the country, and I'm going to shame each of these Republicans. Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, at the time Mitt Romney, whoever was top of the Republican Party. And we are going to call them out as saying they are going to fight. Those Republicans are saying we will not extend the tax cuts for lower class people if our rich donors don't get the money. And if I were president, or if I were Obama at the time, I would have said, then Republicans could be the one that let tax cuts for the middle class and the lower class expire so rich people could have their tax cuts. Put it on them. But the Democrats are weak. They're not a real opposition force. They don't fight, and they don't fight smartly. Because you want to know something? You had a president in Obama who was fairly articulate with his words, who was a great speaker, who could have went around the country and shamed every last one of these social Darwinists in the Republican Party masquerading as public servants. But he didn't do it because, again, the Democrats are weak. So where is the message from the Democratic Party fighting this new round of tax cuts? Why are they not going around the country shaming these top Republicans? You want to know why? I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the Democratic Party's top donors benefit from this, and a lot of the top donors in the Democratic Party want their tax cuts. They want their cake and eat it too. They're on social issues, they're Democrats, but on getting tax cuts for themselves and their families so they could buy more yachts, they love it. They love it. So why isn't Nancy Pelosi out having a press conference or doing rallies on this? Why isn't Chuck Schumer out doing rallies about this? Why? Because, first of all, they know they're hypocrites and can't really fight against the Republicans' tax cuts for the rich because they themselves are bought off. Maybe the Democrats, when they're in power, don't propose tax cuts for the rich, but they allow deregulation for the rich. They allow subsidies for the rich. They take the rich's money and then they don't send bankers to jail. They take the oil companies' money and they don't push against fracking. You want to talk about pragmatism? It is an easy and pragmatic political strategy to attack the Republicans for pushing permanent tax cuts for people making more than $500,000 a year. What in the world, in what sane world does that make any sense? Most Trump supporters don't even support that, giving those tax cuts to those people making that kind of money. I know because I met them. They were against the bank bailouts. They're against tax cuts for the rich. Trump talked against that on the campaign trail, even though he was faking it. But you don't have a Democratic Party that could fight. You don't have a Democratic Party that even knows how to message. Only Bernie Sanders and a few progressives. No. If you look at Bernie Sanders' Twitter, and I know the guy who does his digital videos, there's some of the best, most clear and common sense videos pointing out how the Republicans are basically stealing from the middle class and the lower class to give yacht owners more tax cuts and subsidies. No common sense person in America living paycheck to paycheck is for that. And the ones that are voting for Republicans based on Christian fundamentalism and stupidity like that. So when I see this kind of stuff happening, but the Democratic Party pretty much, putting out a statement against it, but doing nothing to actually fight it, that's why the Republican Party is so successful in getting things passed, because they don't even have a strong, real opposition. Chuck Schumer, from the beginning of the Gorsuch nomination, should have wrangled every single Democrat to vote no right away. That's what the Republicans would do. On Brett Kavanaugh, same thing. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. Right now, he should mandate that Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, and all Democrats, their policies should be Medicare for all. Because that's what the polls say. If you're just thinking common sense politics, follow the polls. Follow public sentiment. Not that complicated. Victoria says, I love Bernie, but he's not even ruthless enough for what we need. He bowed down when he should have stood up. In some cases, I agree. I called out Bernie on the campaign trail when he was going to a knife fight holding a spoon. I mean, is this toxic of me to say? Why do we have an opposition party in this country that basically puts out, quaint statements and then does nothing? This is why we keep getting these tax cuts for the rich, because people like Obama allow it to happen because they're held at gunpoint. You know, the one good thing, the only good thing that Bill Clinton, well, not the only good thing, but one of the things that he did that was right, Newt Gingrich was holding a gun to his head and saying, we're going to shut down the government if you don't give us welfare reform. I think it was welfare reform or tax cuts for the rich. And you know what Bill Clinton said? Go ahead. You guys will be the ones blamed. And guess what happened? The Republican Party was blamed. In one case, Bill Clinton did the right thing. But Obama couldn't do that. He extended the Bush tax cuts for the top earners permanently. He should have said, no. You, the Republican Party, can explain why you are allowing middle-class tax cuts for lower-class and working people to go away so that rich people could get their tax cuts. Explain that and put it on Republicans. But the Democratic Party doesn't know how to do that. And that is infuriating. And by the way, the Democrats aren't the only problem. I mean, in the same sentence, in the same week, you have Republicans looking, again, to take even more money out of the government's coffers, which they're then going to say, well, we got to cut Social Security, we got to cut Medicaid, we got to cut Medicare because we have a huge debt and deficit, which they are exploding under Trump. But at the same time, you have Trump this morning made a deal, a new NAFTA deal. So he made separate deals with Mexico and now a separate deal with Canada. And NAFTA is gone, and they're renaming it I think the U.S. Mexico Canada Trade Agreement or something like that. I didn't read the whole agreement. I'm not going to lie to you. I read some of it. I don't think it's what Trump promised on the campaign trail. I could tell you that. I don't think, from what I read, it's going to create a tsunami of jobs coming back to America. Not at all. But unfortunately, his workers are just going to see his voters are just going to see the headline and be like, that guy, he said he was going to get rid of NAFTA, and he did. They're not going to look at, oh, well, these factories aren't coming back. But what's so insane is you have on one end the Republicans under Trump's direction voting to make tax cuts for the rich permanent, voting for additional tax cuts, which are going to suck out an additional $600 billion over 10 years, while on the other token, you got Trump this morning at a press conference saying this new trade deal is going to flood money back into America's coffers. So, on one end, Trump doesn't care about zapping hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars between the first tax cut and if this second tax cut passed, you're talking $2 to $3 trillion taken away from the government's coffers. But he's saying his new deal with Mexico and China are going to add additional hundreds of billions of dollars to the government's coffers. It is intellectually dishonest, and it's also hypocritical. So you don't care about sucking money out of the government's coffers. And by the way, government's coffers means Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, heating for low-income people in the winter, food stamp programs, affordable housing, and all programs for the workers. Because when you suck the money out of the coffers, what do you think Trump's going to do? What do you think the Republican Party is going to do? They go for cutting programs for working and poor people and minorities. So government coffers really means for you, middle class and lower class people.